She wants me to go first. So we are, both of us do different things. We're both freelance artists. So my background's applied theatre for social change. I work with lots of different groups. And Hafsah's a writer and a poet, but we formed Outside the Frame Arts about 3 years ago because we specifically wanted to platform unheard voices and challenge the gatekeepers of knowledge through the arts. And our Outside the Frame Arts started through a project about Palestinian poetry and Palestinian plays. We wanted to illuminate some of the kind of writers that often people don't know about because, you know, everybody knows about Shakespeare. And that was the catalyst. And then we got funding through Futures Ventures to continue our work. Is that everything?
Yeah.
That's the sign of a good double.
Well, it's allowed us to carry out the work that we wanted to do with certain communities that wouldn't normally access the arts. So we worked with a lot of women's groups in and around Manchester, and we were able to take plays and poetry to them, and they were able to make connections between the 1948 Nakba of Palestine and the partition of India and Pakistan. So they were able to tell their stories in the ways that they wanted to, which is really important because we don't usually see Muslim women speaking their own narratives. And that's something that's really important, especially me being Muslim myself. The project allowed us to do that. You know.
Working with the Arts Council in this case, did you feel that was very restricted? Did you feel that there were a lot of kind of potential gotchas and obstacles or whatever to the way you would ideally like to be working?
So there's a few things. One is that actually just the application process in the first place leaves you completely exhausted. I mean, the amount of, I'm dyslexic, but I can write the applications, but the level of work that I need to put into it and the amount of rewrites, some people can just bash them out. And so that is just an unpaid, so already that is really debilitating. And I think just the feeling of having to make sure, I really appreciate having the funding from the Arts Council. It's not so much that, but there's a restriction. It can feel a little bit restrictive, and there's no support. We had mentoring, didn't we?
And it's quite a difficult process. There's a lot of people that can't access those Arts Council forms, and the technical jargon that you need to fill it out. And what we loved about Futures Venture was that we could shape the project as we were moving along. There didn't have to be a specific outcome at the beginning that we thought about. We were able to say, actually, this isn't working. Is it all right to do something else? And we were mentored through that conversation as well. So that was great.
Yeah. So Keisha would meet with us because of the fact that we were creating a show. So she would support us through that process and did a script reading with us, didn't she? And that was just so helpful because of one of the first meetings. We then realised that we'd written 5 plays in one.
Yeah, we were just trying to do too much. I mean, the topics are quite heavy topics, so it was good to have that mentorship with Keisha just to realign ourselves, during the process.
Yeah, so it was the mentorship from Alison and Keisha, and then also the fact that we had the freedom to extend the project to 2 years. That was a big thing for us. And the application process and the fact that we don't have to worry about the politics. So all those things, I think, makes for me, I can't imagine another fund that does that.
Well, we were in and around Manchester, but we would go to the APNA Women in Haslingden. And we had lots of conversations with people. So we went to Birmingham when there were other exhibitions on, and we were able to speak to a lot of Muslim women that weren't necessarily living in Manchester, but still had something to offer, in terms of their experiences. So the fund allowed us to do that. So we spoke to women in Manchester, we spoke to women in Birmingham and in the Haslingden area as well.
It's an Islamic girls' school. We did some consultation for cuts of the cloth.
an ESOL group in
Yeah.
Ashton-under-Lyne, where they were learning English as a second language.
Yeah. So there were quite a few community groups that informed the play. So we did a lot of research for it. Yeah.
I think it's really important who's doing the questioning and who's doing the exploring, who's doing the research, you know, who are the gatekeepers of that project. And because I come from that community, I'm Muslim myself, I'm South Asian, you know, woman of colour, and for me to be able to have the funding to speak to them was really important because those relationships take time. You know, working with communities brings its own challenges. You need that time to build up trust. And some of the workshops that Niikki and I would do, you know, a lot of these women had never done things like that before. So what the beautiful thing that's come out of it is actually we've made really good connections with them and stayed in contact with them. So when it came to promoting the play, they were able to share things through their networks, and everybody's kind of fed into it. So there is a legacy to the work in terms of support afterwards as well. So it's great linking all those networks together. We're hoping to develop the play further and tour it, hopefully, just to create dialogue and raise awareness about what's happening, because we don't often hear narratives from Muslim women. One of the major feedbacks that we got after the play, and they were sold out, you know, the shows that we did, they were saying that it was for some of them it was the first time that they'd seen themselves represented on stage and their stories.
Yeah, I wish we had done a proper, but definitely, you know, when you looked out at the audience, it was not your home average white middle class audience.
Yeah.
It was mixed, and there was a lot of Muslim women there.
Yeah.
That's what I remember, and I remember other people saying that, you know, it just feels differently to come to a play like that. It feels like you're subverting it, because also, which you didn't say, which was that you were on the main stage, and that again was not to have a Muslim woman character representing herself on stage in that way, not through like a Western framework where normally you see certain shows. So yeah, that really meant that it felt really important to carry it on. And you were talking about when we went to Birmingham, didn't you? And remember that, you know, we went to that exhibition, didn't we?
Yeah, the decolonising.
Yeah. Did you want to say anything about the decolonising exhibition? You don't have to. There was that was another thing. There was an exhibition in the museum. Was it the the Birmingham Museum?
Yeah.
And it was specifically about decolonising the museum, and it was showing like the history of the Indian community in. I'm trying to remember Indian community in Birmingham, but people were crying because they were just like, I've never seen anything like this before in these kind of quite colonial spaces. So I think similar to what you said about the Lowry. Yeah.
That's actually been a really brilliant experience, because what I was saying downstairs to somebody else actually is that it's great to be in a space where you can see the different ways that people are resisting and fighting, and learn from each other. And I think, you know, that an event like this just makes you realise how much work is being done, because sometimes your projects can feel like they can be quite a lonely business, and to be able to be around others that are also fighting their fights in their own unique ways is really inspiring.
Yeah. No, it's great. I think often you just remember the people. I think I would have liked to have maybe been a little in the room. I would like the room to have been less formal, because I get intimidated by those kind of big spaces, and I thought it was going to be kind of more smaller breakout sessions where we could have more intimate conversations. That would be not critical, just feedback of if something else was to happen again, because I also know how much work goes into organising these events. I can't even imagine, because I've been organising since last year. But there was one other thing, that idea of what radical is we were talking about this yesterday, that sometimes what one person's idea of radical is sometimes connected to privilege, like what you can do that's radical. You know, for us, it literally is also just about how we work with the people that we're working with. It's not always about say, like, outwardly calling ourselves political, just actually the community groups that we went to work with in Rossendale, who would have never have had those opportunities to work with us in that way, without having to push an agenda that often with the Arts Council, that it was okay that they brought their kids, that it was okay if people dropped, you know, being able to be quite fluid with it.